Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. We are going to solve the world's problems right now, so I hope you are all taking notes. If you are like me, you were very impressed with Margaret Atwood's keynote. When Marzi asked her what she would speak to the Prime Minister about, her thoughtful reply was to recommend thinking about Christianity and the parable of the Good Samaritan. For a second there, given all the twists and turns in that conversation, I was worried she'd recommend pantyhose and miniskirts, but I'm happy we didn't go there. So the commissioner here gave us a message. Looks like the commission's got this under control. EP elections are around the corner, and knowing how the European Union works, I think we can all be confident that member states will equally apply these new mechanisms with the same amount of rigor and spirit as the authors intended. So my first question for Tomislav is this: as the sole politician on stage, how much of democratic resilience depends on elections alone?
Wow, what a question. First of all, let me greet everybody and thank to the organizers for the invitation to be here on this conference, on the Budapest Forum, but also on this panel. Let me go a little bit back on the message of the commissioner. I guess you were a little bit ironic with all the countries being equal in...
Not at all, not at all.
Not at all, right. I'm a little bit worried, okay, as being, it seems, the only politician on the panel. I can recall the issue of the mayor, or the candidate for the mayor of Chicago in beginning of this year, where there was a deep fake video that probably influenced heavily a campaign in the last round of the elections. It's hard to say, I mean, what was the impact of this deep fake video. So we are not talking only about fake news. We are now talking through the artificial intelligence and all the other tools about possibilities of deep fake videos and audios that will be probably also a weapon in the election campaigns. And we might see that happening also for the European elections. And I'm deeply concerned about this. So this is another level of things that can influence democracy and democratic elections. When we were talking about the US elections tampering and about the fake news factories, actually, I don't know how many of people know here, some of the biggest fake news factors were coming from my region, from the Balkans, especially from the country Macedonia. And so this is, I mean, in the verge of all these conflicts that are around the world right now. I think it's possible that there will be attempts to influence the European elections, not only through the fake news, which was the first generation of these digital tools tempering the democratic elections, but also with the fake videos, deep fake videos and audios. And for me, this is much more disturbing because we are now, you know, developing different tools to say what is fake news and what is not, and people are already even used to this word. And you know, people when they read something, they either believe it or not. But you know, you can maybe people also have certain skepticism when they read something because they are not sure if it's true. There's also bigger and bigger skepticism towards mainstream media rising in the whole European Union. But when you actually see a politician talking something in a video, it's very, very difficult to convince the voters that that's not true. And that's something which is for me deeply disturbing, and I hope the European Commission has developed mechanisms how to stop this happening in the European elections, which I think maybe, I mean, always European elections had a big stake, but now with all these conflicts happening, I think that definitely, I mean, there will be players maybe like Russia again, or other players and countries which will try to influence the direct elections for these European elections.
So when the commissioner was speaking here, he was talking about an event that's going to happen and what the commission's proposals and new tools and methodologies might be to kind of prevent riskier situations from arising. But that deals with elections specifically. And when we talk about democracy, it seems to me that oftentimes these conversations get lost in just purely elections alone. One of the things we see in the Hungarian case is that we have no shortage of opposition parties in election season. Oftentimes these parties have no meaningful grassroots presence. There isn't politics happening between the elections. And you mentioned AI, the risks associated with that. There is a certain level of training almost that needs to happen in a population to kind of prepare them for the new risks that emerge. But what I'm very curious about, and I'm hoping perhaps Anna could speak to this, is what is the role of the political party, the political agent, in the time between elections to address some of the challenges even that Tomislav just spoke about?
Okay, thanks for the question and thanks for having me here. I guess it's one word to learn. It's called participation. And between two elections, which is about representation, probably politicians should learn how to organize society at the you mentioned grassroots level. I would say the local level where people really exist, because we cannot have democracy without people. We can have representation without the people because they are not needed for representation, because we have representative institutions and delegates or elected members and the elected bodies like government, parliament, whatever. But it's not enough if we call, and I see this firsthand in Hungary, in that sense, that usually these so-called parties, which not any of them are really parties in that sense that they do not have even a visible membership or any kind of organization that would be called as a kind of party, as an organization, or real connection with people, with the people. But I guess it's problematic that it won't work if we call people every 4th year that, okay, now vote for me. And then we do not win, we lose them, we let them go out of the system or our perspective, and then we start to do the daily politics you mentioned among us with other parties and representatives at the national level, and we totally abandon the local politics. So I was never really interested in local politics when I studied pol sci, because national politics and international politics is much more interesting. What governments do, what international organizations do. But the heart of democracy is at the local level. And what I think what would be important, especially in the case of the European elections, which are not European elections in that sense that we cannot vote for European parties, only national parties on national issues. So what would be important to strengthen those local issues that can be interesting or important at the European level as well, and to send some messages to the people that, okay, we know we deal with European issues in general, but we know that you will vote for local parties on local cleavages or based on your local interest in politics, your local conflicts and whatever. So I think it would be important to learn the EU that they have to strengthen local democracy, which is not the national one, but the local one. Also, I really like these issues that they prepare networks, and hopefully they will publish white books and green books and recommendations, and this kind of official vocabulary of the EU bureaucracy. However, in times of crisis, it's not about strengthening democracy, but defending democracy. And you cannot defend democracy with those institutions who try to destroy democracy. In case of, for instance, Hungary, I dare to say that they may invite the Hungarian electoral offices to participate in these networks. However, they will have a very different approach toward free and fair elections if we see the Hungarian procedure and the recent Hungarian development in elections than, let's say, the German electoral office. So my problem is that you cannot involve those who want to limit democracy or weaken democracy for defending or strengthening democracy. So first, strengthening local politics and letting people involved in politics, which is also a challenge for the EU because they do not really like it. If you take the example of European Citizens Initiative and the Commission's response, they do not even care about the millions of signatures when they get it. And also on the other hand, trying to do something more than simply organizing networks for defending the real fair nature of elections.
Thank you. Matthias, I've seen that you were jotting down notes there. Is there anything that you'd like to contribute to this?
Yes, I can. And one of the things that I wrote down is we should do more research on democracy at the local level. I agree. And I was scanning the room to see if Andreas Schädler is with us. He is the head of the research group on de-democratization and re-democratization here at the Democracy Institute in Budapest. And I don't think he's here, but in the afternoon I will knock on his door and I will tell him this very idea. So, Andreas, you're in charge of re-democratization research. You should look at the local level. We haven't done that nearly enough. Another observation is that there is a slight tension between, or discrepancy, between the title of this panel, Towards Redemocratization, and the message of the commissioner, which was much more modest. It was not about redemocratization, it was about two things, the defense of democracy and democratic resilience. And I think that's much more realistic. We're not there yet. You can dream about redemocratization, and especially if you live in Hungary, you have to, because otherwise, yeah, it becomes pretty bleak. But we're not there yet. And also, I'm talking here as a political scientist. So what we are working on at the moment is indeed democratic resilience. So why are some democracies better able to withstand authoritarian tendencies and challenges than others? And the picture is not good. So if democracies get in trouble, so if anti-pluralists get in power and start jeopardizing democratic institutions. So once this process of de-democratization or autocratization starts, 4 out of 5 democracies die. Those are the statistics. So once a democracy gets into trouble, the trouble is real. And what we're doing at the moment is finding out, so why do some countries get to this stage to begin with? Yeah, why do some countries experience autocratization and others do not? And then once the trouble really starts, what is left to be done? What should we count on to save democracy, to defend democracy? Is it civil society? Is it the courts? Is it the international community? Is it opposition parties that unite? From what we know so far, it seems that courts play a very important role. So independent courts can rein in anti-pluralist governments. But once these courts lose their independence, then it's pretty much game over. I realize I'm ending on a rather depressing note, so I'm now struggling to say something positive. Yes, I have something. Well, the thing is, we're in Hungary, and I think the focus of the Budapest Forum is very much on this part of the world, and for very good reasons. But if you look beyond, and that was also part of the title, right, of the Commissioner's presentation, challenges and opportunities within and beyond the European Union. So if we look beyond the EU, the problem is not de-democratization. The problem is that existing autocracies get even more autocratic. So if you look at the latest report by Freedom House, an American NGO that every year publishes an overview of the state of freedom around the world, in their latest report they have a table with the countries where in the last decade, the last 10 years, freedom declined most rapidly, precipitously. And the number one is not Hungary. Hungary is only, I think, at rank 12, not even in the top 10. If you look at the top 10, it's existing autocracies. It's places like Libya and South Sudan and Nicaragua and Venezuela. They were never democratic, or at least not recently, and there things have even gotten worse. So in that sense, you know, what is happening in Hungary and Poland is actually not representative for global trends. Thank you.
I'd like to kind of put a button on that idea and say that even there are differences between the styles of governmental stewardship between Poland and Hungary. Very different. I always get kind of nervous when I hear people lump the two countries into the same basket, because I think that deprives all of us of a really meaningful conversation about the nuances of what we're actually talking about. I'm very fortunate because Flora is on stage, and it's very rare that a journalist gets to speak to another journalist. One of the things that we've heard in the conversations so far is the role of individuals in democracy. You know, you can get down to the singular level. And I happen to believe, as a journalist, that this profession does come with a certain moral compass. When I write about democracy, it is informed by a set of values. And I'm not ashamed of that. I am autonomous in how I write, and people can critique that, and they're fair to do that. But what is very interesting in this conversation, and I'm really hoping that Flora might be able to shine some light on this, as a reporter who writes about Hungary, where there are challenges to democracy, but who also has to write from other countries, the United States, write from Great Britain, and for those audience, can you share with us, as somebody whose profession is vital to a functioning democracy, the differences in reporting in these environments?
Yes, but I also would like to follow up on just one sentence, as Mr. Bogaerts has mentioned, and I also would like to thank the organizers for having me on this panel. So what I'd like to follow up on is democratic resilience that he mentioned. And in order to have that, we need to have informed citizens. And for that, media freedom is crucial. Informed citizens are resilient to fake news, to all of these extremist ideas. So I believe that's a really key element to democratic resilience here. And to answer your question, I have worked in Hungary until 2019 for Hungarian daily outlets. And one of the main challenges that I have faced is that I didn't really got answers to my questions from the institutions that are working for all of us. They're working for the people.
Maybe they didn't understand the question.
That is a possibility. And the key difference in working in the U.S. is that I most often do get answers to those crucial questions that I'm asking, not for myself, but to everyone, to my readers.
I'd like to move on now to the kind of pressing challenges that aren't as local, but have local effects. Russia is waging a genocidal war of aggression next door. We have intensifying friction in the Balkans. We all have heard the news about what transpired recently between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And I'm sure you all are all aware of the horrific events unfolding in Israel and Gaza. If we had a globe here in front of us, I could probably take a marker and sketch the contours of an active conflict fault line that runs down from Ukraine to Gaza. My question is this. We're here to talk about building sustainable democracies, re-democratizing. But it seems, in light of the events that we are facing, the global events, that we're talking about building a house in an active earthquake zone. this comes with immense challenges. So my question to Tomislav is this: how are these global events affecting your job on a local level? How do they manifest themselves, if at all?
Well, I'll answer to your question, and I'll a little bit touch on what other panelists said, because I think it's important that we also have a conversation with each other, not only with passive audience, so far passive. I became mayor 2 years ago, a little bit more than 2 years ago. I was a part of civil society for a long time, and I was leader of many social movements, and managed to come to the position of mayor of Zagreb with a record win so far. I mean, historical record win, and by establishing it, we established our own party, so we were not part of some other parties that existed before we arrived to the political scene, which was only a few years ago. So we are rooted, let's say, in the social movements and in the civil society, and as a result of that, I would say also, it's why we got the popular support. So being mayor of Zagreb, having many challenges to deal with after the previous mayor who was in power for 20 years, very, to say the least, controversial figure in Croatian politics or even wider. I had to deal with earthquake, the Zagreb earthquake, not the political earthquake. Then the pandemic, then the war in Ukraine with refugees and all the other issues. I mean, where you have to adopt city policies in education and health, in social policies related to that issue. Then after that, the energy crisis. Then after that, inflation. And then we had the biggest storm in Zagreb history as a result of climate change, obviously, which swept the city, destroyed 10,000 trees on the streets in only half an hour. And we were also under a big threat of a major flood in August. Not in spring, not in autumn, but in the middle of August, in summer. So this is only last 2 years. And being a mayor of the capital city, I mean, to deal with all these challenges, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's hard to comprehend even how things are developing swiftly and how one crisis is connected to the other. To go back to your question on democracies, peace, war conflicts, I think still, and somebody said it on the first panel, I think democracies rarely fight each other. So I think democratization is a path towards more peace in the world. I think also that representative democracy, in order to fight for stability or for representative democracy as such, I don't think it's enough. I think we have to then do more, especially we can do it on the city level, more of direct democracy, more of participatory democracy, and more of deliberative democracy in order to have representative democracy survive. That's at least my opinion. And the second, to spread not only, so this is when we talk about only 4 years elections, and in the meantime the citizens are supposed to just get decisions being implemented and not have a say. I don't think this is, you know, a correct path forward. And the other thing is also to talk not only about political democracy in a kind of a narrow sense of the word, but also about economic democracy, to talk about equality, to talk about climate change as one of the major, or the biggest challenge that we face, but not only as a challenge, but maybe also as an opportunity. And I'll now speak a little bit about what Mayor Carcioni said in his opening speech, with the hope that I can follow up on that in my third intervention. And that is that I strongly believe that the green transition that we are supposed to do as cities and as countries is also an opportunity to expand and to bring more people into ownership of the renewable source of energy. When we talk about citizens' energy, to have more local ownership of the source of energy, and basically have more popular, or have more populists, or have more demos being a part of that energy transition and benefit of this energy transition. And I think this is the only way, not only to counter the narratives that come from the far authoritative, also far right, but also this is the way, in the same time, how to actually be able to successfully do green transition in the first place.
I think we'll move over to the final topic, and then I'd like to open up to questions here from the audience. You know, with the EP elections just a few months away, analysts have been whispering, oftentimes screaming like banshees, about a surge in support for the far right and authoritarian and Eurosceptic parties. If that happens, the analysts say, then we might see a shakeup in the European Parliament's existing order, one that produces alliances between previously mainstream parties and extremist groups. You talked about creating a narrative that is not one the far right has. I guess my question here would first go to Anna, and how would you explain this drive or this surge in support for the far right in Europe? What are the causes of that? Why is it eclipsing discussion or debate about the green issues, climate issues?
Okay, let me tell you a secret. I got this question yesterday, and I put it to AI, just to check what AI would reply. And it's beautifully organized and edited answer with several indicators and factors like climate change and growing inequalities and the rise of populism and stuff like this. However, what I would like to highlight is that, from my perspective, which is the perspective of a scholar who is interested in direct democracy as a scholar and a citizen, and let me mention that this was heartwarming to hear a politician who praises direct democracy and is not against direct democracy. Thanks for this. So what I guess is that the EU should be, not the EU, because what is the EU, the institutions or the idea, whatever, not the EU, but the pro-European or the so-called federalist forces or the not Eurosceptic forces, I guess, would have to provide a clear image about the stake of the elections, because what we know recently is the stake of the elections from the perspective of the so-called sovereignist or extremist forces. But we do not see the opposite. We do not see the alternative of this, I guess. And what's the cause is that because the EU and the pro-European forces forgot to give us proper answers, a proper perspective. Is there anyone in this room who, for instance, remember the plans and the five different plans of Juncker presidency and Juncker Commission? It was published a couple of years ago as the futures, the possible futures of Europe. There they are. What happened with this perspective, with these programs, with these proposals? So my problem is that the EU, in that sense that, okay, this is at stake. This is what you have to decide on. It's not clear from the European side. That's why the skeptics can be so popular, because we see their message clearly and we do not see the other message very clearly. Or we may know that, yes, growing sustainability, democratic resilience and stuff like this, but these are only buzzwords. And when you ask the people, okay, how can I translate this to my own life? The sovereignist may say that, okay, Brussels won't be here. Brussels won't direct us as a national government to do something or not to do something. We will be free. Let me warn you that the buzzword and the key slogan of the skeptics, of the Eurosceptics, will be freedom. Viktor Orban talks about freedom all the time, that they represent freedom, they represent liberty, against the oppression of the European institutions. So they have a call, they have an image of the European cooperation, and what I feel is that the other side a bit lost the opportunity to show their ideas at the popular level.
You and Matthias are really depressing to talk to about these issues. And Flora, you've written a lot about far-right network building. And what do you think some of the causes are here? What is driving this supposed surge?
This is a surge that didn't start now. It started in 2015 during the migration crisis. And the reason for that is that people in times of any kind of crisis, economic or migration crisis, tend to seek strong leaders. And that's exactly what far-right parties promised. And that's what we are seeing in Europe, all over Europe, not just in Hungary. But what we have to see is that populists don't offer real solutions. They offer a community. They offer a sense that they speak to the people. They give voice to people who might feel like they have been forgotten in a time of an economic boom, maybe. And I have been actually really fascinated by this conversation between you and Mr. Gladden Pepin on this stage. And that was a really interesting example to me, because you brought up the conflict in Ukraine. And what he answered was that we want peace. And this is an answer that we hear really often from far-right or populist leaders in these times, that we want peace. But what they don't say is that what this peace would mean for Ukraine, for example, from a territorial aspect or from a sovereignty aspect. So we can see that they're not really offering real solutions. It's just a really compelling idea for people who feel like they are in crisis. And in times of crisis, in times of conflict, it's really easy to blame external elements or external effects. And that's exactly what far-right parties or far-right leaders use here. The element of fear. The element of who can be blamed for this situation that we're in. And I think here language really matters. The language that these parties, the language that these leaders use. And what we are seeing here, and Hungary is a prime example of that, is that a governing party started to implement these extremist and far-right elements to their use of language.
I'd like to ask you whether, to have a more forward-looking kind of approach to this conversation right now, are there any examples that you can draw on from this base of knowledge in the world of academia that can show there are real, meaningful areas of opportunity that can be seized by democratic forces on the right, on the left, the people who have a vested interest in seeing that this fragile ecosystem stay alive?
Yes, I can, and it's very easy. And I'm just going to follow up on what Anna said. I see the next European Parliament elections as an opportunity. So I'm not pessimistic about that at all. Yeah, there are signs that the far right is gaining even more ground. I mean, I moved with CEU to Vienna, and also there, if you follow Austrian politics, yeah, there might be a far right takeover next year.
You have to move again.
Yes. Oh, how about Zagreb?
Too soon.
Okay, good to know that we have an alternative. So the permissive consensus about European integration is over. Yeah, the time that you people in Brussels, in Strasbourg, that could just mind their own business, and they were not really bothered by national parliaments and national governments, and the public was, yeah, okay, it's EU, we heard about it, but we don't really know much about it, and we don't really see what the EU is doing. That has changed, and that's a change for the better. Yes, the EU has become contested, but that's what democratic politics is about. The problem is that the EU is now contested from one side of the political spectrum only, and that's the populists, that's the far right, that's the crazy stories about the EU colonizing Eastern Europe, there's a task here for EU pro-European parties. They need to tell their part of the story. They need to inform citizens about why is the EU important, what are they doing, how is it affecting, improving your life. And I think that that's happening a bit. So, for example, the media is really covering the attempts of the Commission to control big tech. Yeah? So it's Brussels versus Silicon Valley. That's exciting stuff. That's something people can relate to. That's a positive story. So yes, if you ask me, I'm looking forward to the next European Parliament elections, and this time I might even vote.
Oh, wow. There we go. Already we converted them. Final question here from me, and then we'll turn to the audience. One of the allegations that has been thrown around for quite some time is that the European Union has effectively bankrolled the autocratization process in certain member states. It's very hard to walk past that. Now, with the conditionality and the rule of law debates, we see that the Commission has been a bit more assertive on slowing that process, using the tools that it has. But what I'm curious about is whether you guys feel as though the European Union has done enough to support democratization in those countries where these issues are prevalent, where they're real. So when you talk about, you try to contrast billions of dollars being pumped into an economy to prop up a political class, you don't see the opposite happening. You don't see money on that scale going to support social movements that are democratic in nature, that do hope to drive up citizen involvement in the state around them. So my question to you all here is, what can the EU do to more meaningfully support the democratization process on the local, national, and perhaps even the EU level?
I'll bravely take the first mic. Well, in my opinion, I think the Mayor Carcioni would be good to answer on this, especially about the EU funding conditionalities going over the national government and then being basically trickled down to the cities. But in my mind, and I speak on this as a progressive mayor, I think green left mayor. I think European Union in first, and I agree here with Anna, that I think first of all the European Union should also strengthen the democratization of itself. So to involve more citizens, it's hard to, it's hard to preach, to the far right and authoritarian leaders, about democracy if you also don't, in my mind, through not only having represented democracy on the European level, but having more say from the European populace or European demos, whatever that might be. The second of all, when you have European Union, in my view, or European Commission better, let's say disciplining national governments based on this, which I support. But I think also in the same time this fuels the narrative of the far right and authoritarian leaders, how they are fighting against this establishment. So they are fighting against the establishment of the global order. Look at this European Union, they want us from Brussels to dictate who are we going to, our migration policy or whatsoever. I think this is also quite a big fuel for them and for their narrative. So to go back a little bit on the opening statement from Margaret Atwood in the morning, she said the word populism for her is not a good word. I mean, we also heard that freedom is used now by the far right, democracy is used by the far right. I mean, basically our political terms. I mean, there are a lot of political scientists on the panel, have different meanings now. I mean, these words are co-opted, basically. I mean, and populism for me also, like I would agree, is not to be equaled with demagogy. Okay, I think if we play on this narrative where we are elite and they are fighting for the populace or for the people, I mean, we are already losing. And elite is not something, I mean, it became also a bad word. I mean, it's actually coming from Latin. If you look at the etymology of the word, it's coming from elect. We are elected. So we are supposed to represent. So we are elite because we are elected. But it's becoming this people versus establishment, the centers of power, which with some untransparent, this kind of ways of forming this power and controlling this power narrative that we are fighting against. And so in that sense, also what Mayor Carcioni said in the morning, he said that we have under attack climate science, but we also have under attack even the lifestyles, like cycling, and like vegetarianism. So, you know, it's not anymore that we are cornered by the far right, and when I say we, I talk about green progressives, let's say. We are not only cornered like these are hippies who are talking about climate change and you know, going with a bicycle on your job, but it's now even worse, to joke a little bit about it. We are actually labeled as hipsters. That's much more dangerous, because that's, again, it's elitist to have a bicycle and to go with a bicycle on your job. And when you preach that, you're speaking from a high moral ground to the people who are still in many cities. That's a reality. They need a car in order to do their job and to, you know, to have a family, because the infrastructure is still not there. I mean, in public transport, in cycling infrastructure, etc. So this is also a narrative that we are in my mind, that we are supposed to avoid if we don't play, if we want to really defeat the far right narrative. So the words, the language that we use is very, very important in my mind. And okay, I could go on, but maybe in the question.
I think if I saw Anna would like to comment here, and then we'll open up to the audience.
Yeah, I will join and continue, because I think that the EU should democratize itself for two reasons. The first is that sometimes, not sometimes, in many ways and many times, the EU looks as a kind of two-faced hypocrite in case of democratization and democracy debates. For instance, if millions of people give their signatures and they gather signatures for a European citizens' initiatives, and after that the Commission doesn't even consider the idea, it's not a good message for the people about democracy at the European level. Second, the EU should be not that shy to participate in national politics, and a very good example is the referendum of 2016 in Hungary, which was, okay, basically it was unconstitutional in many ways, but if we see that the whole referendum campaign and the question was about the superpower of the Commission against the Hungarian parliament and the government. And the whole, that was the campaign that lasted, I guess, for 4 months or 5 months. It was a very long campaign prepared by the Hungarian government against the EU. The Commission did not even issue a 2 lines long statement about what is at stake, that this is a lie. The funny part comes here. The next day, the referendum happened on Sunday. The next Monday, the very next Monday, the Commission issued a statement that the allegations and the whole idea was a lie, and of course the Commission didn't want to push the Hungarian government to this, which was hilarious. Why do you communicate with the people after the referendum? Why don't you communicate before? So on the EU side, I would say this. again on the EU side from another perspective. In order to re-democratize something, you have to recognize that this is not a democracy anymore. For the EU, it took more than a decade even to admit that something happens in Hungary and something happens in Poland. And the big difference is that the courts are still intact in Poland. That's why the independent courts can defend the democracy from anti-democratic forces. However, the EU was not that smart in case of Hungary 10 years earlier. But first you have to admit that this is a democratization or autocratization process and you have a responsibility to do something. Second, you have to do what is your responsibility, what you can do. I'm really happy that after 13 or 12 years the EU finally recognized that they actually financed the Hungarian autocratization. So I would recommend that the EU should learn more about political scientists, and from those research groups that they finance on a yearly basis, they spend millions of euros from the taxpayers' money for researches on autocratization. But for me, it looks like they do not really read the papers and the outcomes. Otherwise, they would know that every autocracy has three legs, three strong sources. First, physical. Second, administrative. Third is economic. They realize that, okay, they have a strong support for the economic, let's say, economic pillar of the Hungarian autocracy, and now they try to weaken this pillar, which in many ways I praise, and I think it's okay. And the third is they would have to understand that they cannot build democracy without the people. So at a third level, they have to find parties and people and communities in either at a local level or a national or European, among European representatives from Hungary, who can contribute, whom they can cooperate with in order to re-establish a democratic order based on the people's will and not only European leaders' will. But this is my suggestion. They should read more. It helps.
Thank you. I guess we'll go to the audience. I guess somebody can. We've got some hands up here up front. If you could please just say who you're asking the question from, or your question is addressed to.
So I am Peter Molnár, and former member of the Hungarian Parliament. And would you agree that we should be much more specific when we talk about what is democracy and what is not? I mean, the conceptualization of democracy seems to require more nuanced analysis itself. The current Hungarian government would say, we got elected a bit, sorry about that. They would say Budapest and other cities are governed by the opposition, and if media, and I finish here, if media is the key, as Flora also said, and of course all of us agree, then the media situation is very problematic in many democratic countries, and so a shared responsibility in the European Union to create a situation when a media council such as the one in...
I'm sorry, the question was, do you all agree that we need to define what we mean by democracy? We need to spell out exactly what that means, and we'll take another question here.
Hi, I'm Karolina Zbotniewska from Euractiv Poland, the media. So I have two questions, one to Anna and one to Matis. So to Anna, I would like to ask you, what do you think the European Union should do with us, as Poland and Hungary? Because conditionality doesn't work, so the only other way I see is Polexit and HU exit. Yes, and to you, because you said when there is a grab over judiciary, the game is over, and I'm awaiting Sunday elections with still some hope in Poland that maybe liberal democratic opposition might win in the end. So is it game over? And if, because there has been a power grab over our judiciary, what the liberal opposition, liberal or democratic opposition can do not to have this game over?
Okay, so does democracy, do definitions matter? Yes. Do we have time to discuss what democracy is, should be, could be? No, unfortunately. Do I hope that the democratic parties in Poland win? Yes. Do I have any tips on how to do so? No. Is it game over? No. The stakes are very... Okay. What? But the stakes are very high. So this is an election that is watched because... and that's the problem in countries that are undergoing a process of de-democratization, autocratization. Elections are played out at two levels. It's not just about electing the next government. It's about protecting or changing the regime itself. Yeah? The political system is at stake. And that makes these elections so momentous and important. But I very much like how the chair moderator started today's panel by saying, well, democracy is not just about elections. It's about many other things as well. And that's maybe one of my final thoughts is that if you look at a country like Hungary and what Orban started in 2010, it was a demolition of democracy across all of its domains. So it was not just about elections or the court or the policies and laws. It was, and this is really unique. There are very few countries around the world where democracy was demolished across all its domains systematically. Normally what you see in hybrid regimes is that there's a problem with a president that's too strong, or yeah, they had elections but they were not completely clean. And in Hungary, whatever domain of democracy you look at, there's trouble. And that also means that the job of redemocratization is that much more difficult, because it's not just about electing the good guys in, also because the system has been institutionalized. Yeah, the policies and people are in place and will be very difficult to get rid of. So that's one of the things that really troubled me last year when there were elections in Hungary. So yeah, maybe the opposition wins. And my thought was, yes, and then what? Yeah, then the work only starts. Okay, now I'm again pessimistic.
The first advice from my personal experience, don't go home. When you are on the streets and you protest, you shouldn't go home just because you are tired. Show your strength if this strong autocratization process starts or speeding up. Show your strength, your social strength against the government, and not only at the, and you are much better in this than Hungary, not only in the capital, but all around the country. It is important to collect those who are against autocratization and keep them together as much as possible. What I see is that there is a sequence, or there is a dynamic of autocratization. Unfortunately, you follow us, because the first step is always to silencing and restructure the media, because it gives visibility or it silences the process that will happen. The second step is the safeguard institutions, electoral commissions, courts, constitutional courts, stuff like this. The third is changing the elected bodies. Less representatives, if we have less elected representatives, we will have cheaper parliaments. These are stupid slogans that will be raised. We do not need that much local organization, for instance, or local authorities, elected governments. And the fourth, the final step is the modification of the electoral system. This was the dynamics of the autocratization in Hungary, and this is the dynamics that Poland, and unfortunately Israel follows or tries to follow. And what I would recommend that be as loud as possible, stay on the street as long as possible, and try to raise the awareness not only of the EU or international forces. We were living for years in that idea that the EU won't let that happen. Of course the EU will let it happen because the EU is not here. So it's, first and foremost, I would tell you to raise the awareness and the attention of the people that it is their responsibility. I know it sounds very, on the one hand, pessimistic, and on the other, it's very superficial, but it's really up to the people. If they want to defend democracy, they can. It's hard. It may cost a lot of free time, money, maybe your job, but there is no other solution. And what is also very important from the perspective of the political parties, if you take a look to the literature of the successful democratization processes, is that the opposition forces were not only united, but they knew what would they do if they lose the election, what is the second and the third and the fourth step, and how they will connect the people, how will they organize the society. So hopefully your opposition is a bit smarter, or I would say more prepared for this challenge than our was, and that may help.
All right, final, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. To answer your question, should we be more specific about what democracy is and what democracy isn't? In the whole panel, I mean, or even during the whole conference, when we say democracy, we imply liberal democracy. So democracy is not only majority rule or majority decision. Liberal democracy is far more than that. It's freedom of individuals, freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of gathering. So, and also liberal democracy is supposed to prevent the tyranny of majority. Tyranny of majority towards the individual. And even in the other question, it was phrased how in Poland, so it was not framed how the oppositions or how the progressives, or what, it was how the liberal democratic forces against the others. So we are not anymore questioning different political parties and ideologies within the system of liberal democracy. We are now questioning the whole concept. I mean, not we, I mean, but what is challenged and contested over the decades is the liberal democracy as a system. And that is, I mean, far greater, I mean, challenge. Because they say if the majority rules, I mean, or decides to suppress the individual rights, then it's okay, I mean. Or minority right, then it's okay. It's still democratic. We had a vote, it was majority, and it's fine. So that's, I think, in what I would like to finish with, I think one of the, in my opinion, why far right is having a momentum is that in this time of crisis, it's not only the leadership, but it's also the notion of individualism and community, in my mind. So the liberal democracy is based on individualism, and it has to be, because it's about, we vote as individuals. We have rights as individuals. But in times of crisis, I mean, the far right is pushing more the notion of community, because people are afraid. They're afraid of what is going to happen in the future. And they would like to be a part of community during this crisis. The problem is that the version of community that the far right is preaching is very exclusionary. So in that sense, again, I think, you know, we should combine the concept of liberal democracy and individualism with, especially within cities, with multiple notions of communities. So identity politics is also based on individualism as a cornerstone, but I want to be a member of different communities. So I don't want to have one identity. And I think in cities, you can really have more identities and still be individual and still have a belonging to different communities. On ethnic, interest-based, or, I don't know, religious, or especially even associations or interest-based, I mean, which have nothing to do with identity.
Well, thank you very much. I hope you'll all join me in giving a round of applause to our panelists, and hopefully we give you like a positive mood to go out and eat with.